"Your sister is in here," said the little girl, pointing to the wet box. "But when they open it, they discover something incredible." Let me know what you thought of this story in the comments with a rating from 0 to 10, and tell me what city you're watching from. I really want to know if you like my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The midday sun made the asphalt on the highway that cut through Millfield shimmer like molten glass when Emily Hayes appeared, running between the cars, her small 4-year-old legs barely able to support the weight of the desperation she carried. Her bare feet touched the hot ground as she screamed, her voice hoarse from crying, echoing between the roar of the engines. "Help! Your sister is in here!" William Blackwood had just closed the most important deal of the month at his textile company. At 45, he controlled every detail of his life with military precision, from the timing of his meetings to the temperature of the air conditioning in his luxury sedan. He wore an impeccable blue suit that cost more than the monthly salary of many families in Millfield. His expression remained ever serious, his cold brown eyes behind his glasses, a reflection of decades spent building a textile empire alone, brick by brick, deal by deal. The dirty little girl running towards him should have been just another obstacle on his way back to the office. William adjusted his tie and continued walking, ignoring the desperate cries. He'd learned early on that emotional involvement was a weakness, a lesson his parents, Arthur and Helen, had taught him through constant fighting and emotional abandonment during his childhood. "Please, sir." Emily threw herself in front of him, her small, dirty hands grabbing the expensive fabric of his pants. "She's hurt. She needs help." William stopped, annoyed. The child was clearly neglected, her brown hair tangled, her clothes torn and caked with dirt. But it was the desperation in her large eyes that unsettled him in a strange way, awakening something he had buried long ago. "Where is this sister?" he asked, more to get rid of the situation than out of genuine interest. Emily ran to a soggy cardboard box tossed on the shoulder of the road. Inside, a small orange kitten was meowing weakly, one of its paws clearly injured. The animal was thin, its fur dull, trembling with cold even under the strong Heartland sun. "She fell out of a car that passed by," Emily lied, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. "Nobody stopped to help. Please, sir." William observed the scene with growing confusion. The girl had obviously invented the story about the cat being her sister to get attention, but the pain in her voice was too real to be fake. At 4 years old, she had already learned that lies were sometimes necessary to get help. "She's not your sister," he said, his voice gentler than he intended. "Why did you lie?" Emily lowered her head, ashamed. Because nobody cares when I tell the truth. Mommy is sick at home, and I don't know what to do. She hasn't been able to get out of bed for 3 days. The confession hit William like a punch to the gut. He vaguely remembered an employee named Sarah who had worked at his factory, a young seamstress, always accompanied by a small girl during lunch breaks in the company's courtyards. The child in front of him could be... "What's your mother's name?" he asked, crouching down to Emily's level. Sarah Hayes. She worked at a big factory, but she lost her job. Now she just cries and says she's sick." William felt a cold chill run down his spine. Sarah had been fired 3 months ago by Carol Jennings, his production manager. At the time, he was traveling, closing contracts in Chicago, and had merely signed the papers Carol presented, trusting her judgment. He vaguely recalled comments about irregularities in her work documents. "Where do you live?" he asked, a growing urgency taking over him. "In the Old Mill District, in a small house near the church," Emily replied, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Mommy doesn't want me to leave the house, but she didn't wake up this morning. I got scared." William picked up the box with the injured cat and opened his car door. "Get in. Let's go see your mother." The drive to the Old Mill District was silent. Emily sat on the leather seat. too small to reach the floor with her feet, fascinated by the luxurious interior of the vehicle. Her small hands caressed the injured cat as she hummed a little song that didn't match her age. The house they found was a simple two-room structure with peeling walls and a fiber cement roof. In the small yard, faded clothes dried on a makeshift clothesline. The wooden gate was unlocked, and through the front window they could see a young woman lying on a twin bed. Sarah Hayes, at 28, had been one of the most skilled seamstresses at the factory. Her black hair was disheveled and dull, her pale face highlighted by deep, dark circles. When she heard voices in the yard, she tried to get up, but staggered, leaning against the wall. "Emily, where were you?" Her voice came out weak, laden with worry and exhaustion. "I brought help, Mommy," the girl said, running to hug her mother's legs. "This gentleman has a nice car, and he's going to help the kitty." Sarah looked up and immediately recognized William Blackwood, the man who was indirectly responsible for her current situation. Her expression changed instantly, a mix of anger, shame, and despair. "Sir," she began, but her voice failed her. "You need medical help," William said, ignoring the obvious awkwardness of the situation. "Are you pregnant?" The direct question made Sarah shrink even more. At 3 months pregnant, she had found out she was expecting a child the very week she was fired. Without health insurance and afraid to face medical expenses, she had been hiding the high-risk pregnancy that left her constantly nauseous and weak. "That's none of your business," she murmured. But the authority in her voice didn't convince even herself. Emily looked back and forth between her mother and William, sensing the tension in the air without fully understanding what was happening. All she knew was that her mother had been sick for days and that this man in a nice suit had a car that could take them to a doctor. "Mommy, tell him about the baby in your tummy," Emily said innocently. "You said that's why you're sick." The silence that followed was heavy. Sarah closed her eyes, defeated by her daughter's unintentional exposure. William processed the information with growing discomfort, realizing that his company had fired a pregnant woman at the very moment she needed stability the most. "I'm taking you to the doctor," he said, his voice firm. "Now." "I don't need your charity," Sarah protested, but her weak voice and the fact that she could barely stand betrayed her words. "It's not charity, it's responsibility," William replied, surprising himself with the admission. "Carol told me you were fired for irregularities in your documents. I want to understand that story better." Sarah sat down heavily on the bed, Emily climbing up beside her and nestling against her in a heart-wrenching protective gesture. The girl held the injured cat in her lap, 3 vulnerable creatures supporting each other in a world that seemed to have turned against them. "The irregularities were hers, not mine," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength for the first time. "Carol was altering the supplier contracts. When I found out, she accused me of being an accomplice and fired me before I could report her." William felt as if the floor had disappeared from under him. For years, he had delegated daily operations to Carol, blindly trusting her work. The possibility that his company was involved in corruption and that an honest employee had been sacrificed to cover up crimes made him nauseous. "Why didn't you come to me directly?" he asked. "Go to the company owner to accuse the manager. Who would believe a seamstress over Carol Jennings?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "She's been with the company for 15 years. I had been there for 3. The truth in her words echoed in William's conscience. He had built a company where employees didn't feel safe reporting problems directly to him. His emotional distance and obsession with control had created an environment where people like Carol could act with impunity. Emily yawned, the exhaustion and stress of the day finally weighing on her. She was still stroking the injured cat which had stopped meowing and was breathing more calmly in the girl's small arms. The simple scene of a child caring for a wounded animal contrasted sharply with the complexity of the adult problems unfolding around her. "Mummy, is the kitty going to be okay?" she asked, breaking the tension between the adults. "We'll take care of him," William said, surprising himself with his own response. "First, we take care of your mother, then we take the cat to the vet." The offer of genuine help disarmed Sarah. For months, she had fought alone against a difficult pregnancy, unemployment, and the responsibility of raising a 4-year-old daughter. The prospect of finally having support, even from an unexpected source, brought tears to her eyes. As William helped Sarah up to go to the hospital, Emily took his free hand as naturally as if this serious man in an expensive suit was a father figure she had never known. The innocent gesture stirred painful memories of William's own childhood, when he had desperately wished for someone who genuinely cared about his well-being. As they walked to the car, none of them imagined that this chance encounter on a dusty Millfield road would change their lives in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Millfield General Hospital was bustling with the typical chaos of a Thursday afternoon when William carried Sarah through the corridors, Emily running beside them with the injured cat still in her arms. The receptionist, a 52-year-old nurse named Lucy Smith, immediately recognized the gravity of the situation upon seeing the young mother's debilitated state. "She's pregnant and showing signs of severe dehydration," William explained as he helped Sarah into a wheelchair. His hands, accustomed only to signing contracts and pressing elevator buttons, trembled slightly as he touched Sarah's cold, damp skin. During the 2-hour wait in the emergency room, William learned details about Sarah's life that left him deeply disturbed. She had worked at his factory for 3 years, always punctual, always dedicated, raising Emily alone since the girl's father left when he found out about the pregnancy. For the last 3 months since being fired, they had survived on the few dollars she could make sewing clothes for neighbors. "Mommy always sews at night when she thinks I'm asleep," Emily recounted, sitting on William's lap as they waited for news. "She cries a lot and says it's her fault we don't have food." The child's cruel innocence in revealing her mother's suffering made William clench his fists. For the first time in years, he felt genuine anger, not the controlled irritation he showed in business meetings, but a hot, protective fury he didn't know still existed within him. Dr. David Morris, a 40-year-old obstetrician, came out of the examination room with a worried expression. "Ma'am, you have signs of preeclampsia in addition to malnutrition. You need complete rest and constant medical supervision. In your current state, both you and the baby are at risk." "What does that mean?" William asked, surprised by how much he cared about the answer. "It means she can't work, she can't lift heavy things, she can't be under stress. She needs a proper diet, expensive medications, and someone to take care of her daughter while she recovers." William looked at Emily, who had fallen asleep in his lap, holding the cat. The girl seemed so small, so vulnerable, that something inside him finally broke. He remembered himself at 5 years old, alone in an empty apartment, while his parents fought on the phone about child support and debts. "She'll have all of that," he said, his voice firm. "How much does the treatment cost?" When Dr. Morris mentioned the figures, Sarah turned even paler. Even if she were working, it would take years to save that amount. William took out his credit card without hesitation, as if he were paying a routine company expense. "I can't accept this," Sarah protested weakly. "I already owe you so much just for bringing me here." "You don't owe me anything. I owe you," William replied, without fully explaining what he meant. On the way back home, Emily woke up and asked the question that would change everything. "Uncle William, do you have any kids?" The word uncle hit him like a lightning bolt. No child had ever addressed him in such an affectionate, informal way. William Blackwood, the businessman feared by competitors and respected by employees, had never been just uncle to anyone. "No, Emily, I've never had children." "Why not? Didn't you want a little girl like me?" The innocent question reopened wounds that William had cauterized with work and emotional distance. He had avoided serious relationships after his parents' traumatic divorce, convinced that deep emotional involvement only brought pain and disappointment. I never really thought about it," he lied. "Mommy said my daddy left because he didn't want a girl, but I think he's dumb because girls are cool." Sarah, leaning against the passenger seat, closed her eyes tightly. Her daughter had just revealed one of the deepest pains of her life, the rejection by Emily's father, who disappeared in the 6th month of pregnancy, claiming he wasn't ready to be a dad. When they arrived at the house in the Old Mill district, an idea struck William that surprised him. "You can't stay here. This house is too small and doesn't have the right conditions for a high-risk pregnancy." "We don't have anywhere else to go," Sarah said, her voice heavy with shame. "Yes, you do," William replied, making a decision that would change his life forever. "My house is too big for one person. There are several empty rooms. Sarah can recover there while working as a private seamstress. Emily would have space to play, a proper education." The offer left Sarah speechless. For months, she had struggled to maintain her dignity while her life fell apart around her. The prospect of security, of a suitable place to raise her children, seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do this for us?" she asked, suspicious. William looked at Emily, who was watching the conversation with her big, intelligent eyes. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because I need you too." The confession surprised even himself. For the first time in 5 years, he admitted that his solitary, controlled life was not fulfilling, that there was an emptiness in it that work and money couldn't fill. 3 days later, Sarah and Emily moved into William's mansion in the Heights. The house, with 6 bedrooms and an extensive garden, had been designed for a family that never came to be. Now, for the first time, children's voices echoed through the wide hallways. Emily adapted to her new life with the natural ease of children. She spent hours exploring the garden, where she discovered she could draw in the dirt with twigs and create fantastic stories about the colorful flowers. The injured cat, whom William had taken to the vet and who was now named Mel, followed the girl everywhere. Sarah settled into the room adjoining the sewing studio William had set up for her. Slowly, with proper nutrition and rest, her health began to stabilize. She worked a few hours a day, sewing fine clothes for private clients William had found through his business contacts. But it was during the 2nd week that William made a discovery that would change everything. While organizing old company documents for an audit, he found human resources files from 2018. Among the papers were records of an employee named Oscar Hayes, who had worked at the factory in the 90s. Oscar Hayes, Sarah's maiden name. With trembling hands, William kept reading. Oscar had suffered a serious work accident in 1995, resulting in his departure from the company. The file showed there had been an out-of-court settlement signed by William's father, Arthur Blackwood, who owned the factory at the time. That night, William called his father, with whom he had sporadic contact since his parents' messy divorce 15 years ago. "Dad, I need to know about an employee named Oscar Hayes. He worked at the factory in the 90s. The long pause on the other end of the line was telling. "Why are you digging through those old files, William? Just answer me. What happened to him?" "It was an accident, faulty machine. He was partially disabled. We paid a fair settlement." "Fair for whom?" William insisted, a terrible suspicion growing in his mind. "William, that was almost 30 years ago. Why is it important now?" "Because his daughter works for me." "Worked?" Another long pause. Sarah's girl. Oscar had a little daughter at the time of the accident. The confirmation hit William like a gunshot. Sarah was the daughter of a man who had been injured at his company decades ago. His family was connected to her family's suffering through a tragedy he never even knew existed. "What exactly happened, Dad?" he asked, his voice low. "The cutting machine had maintenance issues. Oscar warned us several times. I postponed the repairs because we were going through financial difficulties. When the accident happened, he lost 3 fingers on his right hand and some mobility in his arm." William leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of generations of wrong decisions falling on him. "And the settlement. It was enough to cover medical treatment and a few months' salary. At the time, I thought it was fair." "Fair?" William exploded. "A man lost his ability to work due to our negligence, and you thought a few months' salary was enough?" "It was a different time, son. The labor laws weren't what they are today." When he hung up the phone, William sat heavily in his office armchair. From upstairs, he could hear Emily singing to Mel as she played in her room. The innocent melody contrasted brutally with the devastating discovery he had just made. His family had destroyed Emily's grandfather's life, and now, decades later, he had unjustly fired the same man's daughter, perpetuating a cycle of suffering that began before he was even born. The next morning, William found Sarah in the garden, watching Emily play with Mel among the roses. The girl had made a little cardboard house for the cat and was singing softly as she decorated it with flowers picked from the garden. "Sarah, I need to tell you something about your father." She turned, noticing the seriousness in his voice. "My father, he left when I was 6. Why? He didn't leave. He died 3 years after the accident at the factory. Complications from the injury caused a widespread infection." Sarah's face went pale. Her whole life, she had believed her father had abandoned the family because he could no longer work. Her mother, devastated by the tragedy, had lied to protect her, but the lie had created a different kind of pain, the pain of abandonment. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "Because it was at my factory that he was injured, and it was my father who decided that a minimal settlement was enough to compensate for a destroyed life." Sarah recoiled, as if she had been physically struck. Your family killed my father." The raw accusation echoed between them as Emily continued to play innocently, oblivious to the revelation that was destroying the adult world around her. William knew that the next decision he made would determine not only the future of Sarah and Emily, but also whether he would finally break the cycle of selfishness and neglect that his family had perpetuated for generations. The silence that followed the revelation was broken only by Emily's innocent laughter as she discovered a yellow butterfly perched on her cardboard house. The child was trying to convince Mel not to attack the insect, her sweet voice a stark contrast to the tension growing between the adults. Sarah moved away from William as if he carried a contagious disease. Her eyes, which in recent days had begun to show signs of trust and gratitude, now shone with a mixture of anger and betrayal that cut deeper than any verbal accusation. "For years, I blamed myself," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought my father had abandoned us because we were a burden. My mother never told me the truth about the accident. She just said he had gone away and wouldn't be back." William remained motionless, knowing that any words would be inadequate in the face of the magnitude of the pain he had caused. He watched Sarah's hand shake as she recalled fragments of a childhood marked by poverty and a father's absence. "He tried to work after the accident," Sarah continued, the memories surfacing like pieces of a painful puzzle. "I remember him wearing a special glove on his injured hand, trying to sew shoes at home, but he couldn't hold the tools right. The infection started 6 months later. The detailed description made William shut his eyes tightly. Imagining a man struggling to support his family with a disability caused by his company's negligence was a torture he deserved to face. "Sarah, he began, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture. "No, you don't get to speak now. I need to process this." She looked at Emily, who was now chattering excitedly to the butterfly as if it were an old friend. "I need to decide what to do with this information." William nodded, respecting her space. He watched Sarah approach her daughter and crouch beside her, forcing a smile as the girl enthusiastically explained the colors on the butterfly's wings. Sarah's ability to protect Emily's innocence, even amidst her own suffering, revealed a strength of character that humbled him. That afternoon, while Sarah isolated herself in her room, William made a decision that would change the course of everything. He picked up the phone and called Robert Vance, the best private investigator in the region. "Robert, I need you to investigate something for me. I want all the details about a work accident that happened at my company in 1995. Employee's name was Oscar Hayes. That's ancient history, William. Why stir up those waters? Because they're not still, and because I need the whole truth, not just the version my father told me." 2 days later, Robert showed up at William's office, carrying a thick folder of documents. His grave face indicated the news wasn't good. "I found a lot more than you were expecting," Robert said, spreading papers across the desk. Oscar Hayes filed 17 formal reports about the problems with the cutting machine in the 6 months before the accident. All of them were ignored. William examined the documents, recognizing his father's signature on several of them. Each report had been filed without action, marked only with the note, "No funds for maintenance." "But that's not the worst part," Robert continued. "After the accident, your company made a deal with the family to avoid a lawsuit, but the agreement included a non-disclosure clause. If the family spoke about the accident publicly, they would forfeit the settlement." "A non-disclosure clause," William repeated, feeling sick. "They bought the family's silence." "Effectively, yes. And there's more." Robert showed another set of documents. "I found out that Carol Jennings was an administrative assistant at the time of the accident. She was promoted to supervisor shortly after, and over the years, she climbed the ladder to production manager." The connection hit William like a lightning bolt. She knew the whole story. She knew who Sarah was when she hired her. "And she knew who she was when she fired her," Robert confirmed. "William, I don't think Sarah's firing was just about corruption. I think it was personal." That night, William confronted Carol in her office at the factory. The 55-year-old woman, always impeccable in her grey suits, tried to maintain her composure when he placed the documents on her desk. "You knew who Sarah was from the day you hired her," he said, his voice controlled but dangerous. Carol adjusted her glasses, a tactic she always used to buy time when she felt cornered. "William, I don't know what you're talking about." "Oscar Hayes. Remember him, the man who warned about the machine problem 17 times before losing 3 fingers? Carol's face paled, but she held her ground. "That was decades ago. It has no relevance now." "It has every relevance. Sarah Hayes is his daughter, and you fired her not for corruption, but because you found out she was investigating the irregularities you've been committing for years." Carol stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair. "You can't prove any of this." "I can prove all of it," William said, placing another set of documents on the table. "Robert found evidence that you embezzled over $200,000 in the last 2 years through ghost suppliers. And when Sarah started noticing the discrepancies in the records, you silenced her the only way you knew how." Carol's mask of composure finally shattered. She was just like her father, always asking questions, always questioning procedures. Oscar nearly destroyed this company with his constant complaints. Oscar tried to prevent an accident that could have been fatal, William countered. And you, who were there, who saw everything, chose the wrong side. Twice. Carol laughed bitterly. The wrong side. William, I protected this company for 30 years. When your father didn't have the courage to make tough decisions, I made them. When you were too busy building your empire to care about the details, I took care of everything. Oh, you took care of it by stealing and destroying innocent lives. Oscar wasn't innocent. He knew the risks when he chose to operate that machine, and Sarah knew the risks when she decided to snoop in files that were none of her business. The coldness in Carol's words revealed the true extent of her sociopathy. For 3 decades, she had justified terrible acts as business necessities, building a narrative where she was the misunderstood hero protecting the company from problematic employees. You're fired, William said, his voice final. You'll regret this, Carol retorted, gathering her personal belongings. Without me, you don't even know where to begin managing daily operations. When Carol left the building for the last time, taking 3 decades of secrets and lies with her, William felt both relief and terror. He had done the right thing, but now he faced the Herculean task of rebuilding his company's culture from scratch. The next morning, he gathered all the employees in the factory courtyard. In front of more than 200 people, many of whom had worked there for decades, William did something he had never done. He publicly admitted his mistakes. I've come here today to apologize, he began, his voice echoing through the sound system. For years, I allowed this company to operate in a way that harmed honest employees and benefited those willing to corrupt our values. The murmur among the workers showed their surprise. William Blackwood had never publicly admitted weakness. Starting today, we are implementing fundamental changes. There will be a direct channel for whistleblowing, a review of all supplier contracts, and a compensation program for employees who were unjustly harmed in the past. When he mentioned the compensation program, William thought specifically of Sarah and all the other people who might have suffered over the years because of his company's institutionalized negligence. That afternoon, he returned home carrying more than just the weight of a difficult day. He carried the responsibility of repairing decades of damage and the uncertainty of whether Sarah would ever be able to forgive him for his family's sins. He found Emily in the garden, teaching Mel to dance to a song she had made up herself. The girl greeted him with her usual smile, oblivious to the adult dramas reshaping her future. "Uncle William, do you want to dance with us?" she asked, holding out her small hand. For the first time in his adult life, William accepted an invitation to do something completely purposeless beyond pure joy. As he danced awkwardly in the garden with a 4-year-old girl and a cat, he understood that perhaps redemption wouldn't come through grand business gestures, but through simple moments of genuine human connection. Sarah watched from the window, her expression still heavy with pain, but with something new shining in her eyes. A spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, the man who had destroyed her family could also be the one to finally heal it. 3 weeks after Carol's dismissal, life in William's mansion had found a delicate, fragile rhythm. Sarah still barely looked at him directly, but she had stopped hiding in her room whenever he came home. Emily, oblivious to the adult tensions, continued to be the innocent bridge between 2 worlds struggling to reconcile. The most significant change came on a rainy April morning, when Sarah came down to the kitchen and found William making breakfast for Emily. The domestic scene, the powerful businessman cutting up fruit while a 4-year-old girl excitedly explained a dream she'd had about Mel flying like a bird, touched something deep in her wounded heart. "She's never had a father figure," Sarah said, breaking weeks of tense silence. "Since she was a baby, it's always been just her and me." William stopped cutting the apple, his large hands trembling slightly. "I never knew how to be a father figure. My parents. They weren't good role models. What happened between them?" Sarah asked, sitting at the table for the first time since the revelation. My father was obsessed with work, just like I became. My mother felt neglected, betrayed. They fought constantly over money, over time, over priorities. When they finally divorced, I was 15 and had already learned that loving someone meant inevitable disappointment. Emily interrupted the serious conversation by running in to show them a drawing she had made during the night. It was a family of birds, a large one, a medium one, and a small one, flying together over a house with a flower garden. This is our family, she explained, pointing to each figure. Mommy, me, and Uncle William. And that's Mel, flying with us because cats can fly in drawings too. The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. It wasn't filled with tension, but with possibility. Sarah looked at William over Emily's head, and for the first time in weeks, there wasn't just pain in her eyes. Emily, go play in the garden for a little bit, Sarah said softly. Mommy and Uncle William need to talk. When they were alone, Sarah took a deep breath before speaking. I've spent the last few weeks hating you, hating your family, your company, everything you represent, but watching you with Emily, seeing how she's changed since we came here. I'd understand if you want to leave, William interrupted. I found a suitable apartment for you, near the hospital for your checkups. I can transfer enough money so you'll never have to worry about work again. You think money solves everything? Sarah asked, but her voice didn't have the accusatory tone William expected. No, I've learned that money doesn't solve anything that really matters. But it's the only way I know how to try and repair the harm we've caused. Sarah got up and went to the window, watching Emily play with Mel in the garden. The girl had built an obstacle course with cushions and was trying to teach the cat to jump over them, her laughter echoing through the cloudy morning. My daughter is happy here, she said finally. For the first time since she was born, she has space to be a child. She has someone besides me who genuinely cares about her. I do care, William admitted, his voice low. I care more than I should, considering we've known each other for less than 2 months. Why? Sarah asked, turning to face him. Because you two showed me what I was missing by living in isolation. Because Emily treats me like family, even though I'm nothing to her. Because I love you. The confession slipped out before he could censor it. William had spent his entire life avoiding vulnerable, emotional declarations, and now he had just handed his heart completely to the woman whose life his family had destroyed. William, Sarah began, but he continued. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what my family did was unforgivable. But for the past few months, you've become the family I never thought I could have. Emily calls me uncle like it's the most natural thing in the world. You make me want to be a better man. Sarah approached slowly, her hands touching William's face. You think I haven't noticed how you've changed? The man I met on that road never smiled. He didn't play in the garden. He didn't make breakfast while humming. Emily taught me how to hum, he admitted, a faint smile appearing. She said happy days need happy songs. She's right. Sarah paused, struggling with her own emotions. William, does forgiving you mean betraying my father's memory? I don't know, he answered honestly. But I know your father loved you, and if he could see how happy Emily is here, how you're recovering maybe he would understand that sometimes good things can come from tragedies. At that moment, Emily ran in through the door, completely soaked by the rain that had started. Uncle William, Mel is stuck in the tree. Can you save him? The three of them rushed into the garden, where Mel was meowing pathetically from a low branch of the mango tree, clearly too scared to come down on his own. William climbed the wet tree, his expensive clothes getting completely filthy as he rescued the cat. When he came down with Mel in his arms, he found Sarah and Emily laughing at his disheveled appearance. For the first time, Sarah's laughter was genuine, free from the shadow of pain that had followed her for months. "You look like a beggar," Emily laughed. "A handsome beggar." "Emily," Sarah scolded, but she was still smiling. "It's true, Mommy, he does. But I like him like this." That afternoon, as they dried off by the fireplace, Sarah made the decision that would change everything. "I want to stay," she said simply. "Not as your employee or as a charity case. I want to stay as family." "As family," William repeated, testing the words. "Yes, a chosen family. A family that's formed not by blood, but by love and the conscious choice to care for one another." Emily, who was coloring on the floor with Mel asleep beside her, looked up. "Does that mean Uncle William is going to be my real daddy?" The innocent question made the two adults look at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. William knelt beside Emily, taking her small hands in his. "If your mother agrees, and if you want me to, I would love to be your real daddy." "I do!" Emily exclaimed, throwing herself into his arms. "But does that mean you'll love Mommy's baby too?" "I will love the baby," William promised, looking at Sarah over the girl's head. "I will love all three of you more than anything in the world." 6 months later, in a small ceremony in the mansion's garden, William and Sarah were married. Emily was the flower girl, carrying Mel in a small basket decorated with flowers. Dr. Morris, who had monitored Sarah's pregnancy, commented that he had never seen a high-risk pregnancy resolve so completely through emotional peace and love alone. When Sophia was born, a healthy baby with her mother's large eyes and a determined smile that already promised to bring joy to everyone around, William held his daughter in his arms and finally understood what unconditional love meant. The factory had been completely restructured. An Oscar Hayes Memorial Fund was created to assist families of former employees who had suffered work-related accidents. William implemented rigorous safety programs and established an open-door policy where any employee could report problems directly to him. One Sunday afternoon, while watching Emily teach Sophia to make funny faces at Mel, William realized he had found something that no amount of money could buy: redemption through love. The innocent lie of a 4-year-old girl about an injured cat had revealed truths that transformed not only his life, but broke a generational cycle of neglect and suffering. Emily, now 5 and still asking questions that disarmed adults, approached him as he rocked Sophia in his lap. "Daddy William," she said, using the title she had invented, "did you know that sometimes the bad things that happen are just to get ready for the good things to arrive?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Well, if we hadn't found Mel when he was hurt, you never would have met us. If Mommy hadn't gotten sick, we never would have come to live here. If your company hadn't unfairly fired Mommy, you never would have found out about Grandpa Oscar." The childish wisdom in her observation left him speechless. Emily had understood something that had taken him 45 years to grasp: that sometimes suffering is just the path that leads us to where we need to be. "You're right," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Sometimes we have to get completely lost to finally find ourselves." That night, as he put Sophia to sleep and listened to Sarah humming to Emily in the next room, William understood that he had finally found his place in the world. It wasn't at the head of a company or accumulating wealth, but in a small room, singing lullabies to a baby who carried his last name and his unconditional love. The family that a little girl's desperate lie had created became the most genuine truth of his life. And when Sophia grew up, she would hear the story of how an imaginary sister, an injured cat in a cardboard box, had brought together hearts that fate had conspired to keep apart. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you so much.